Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Today, March 8th, is being marked all over the world as International Women's Day under the campaign theme, Accelerate Action. Now, this campaign theme emphasizes the urgent need to take decisive steps towards achieving gender equality, addressing the slow pace of progress, and empowering women and girls around the world. In Nigeria, this year's celebration of International Women's Day could not have come at a more critical time, given the small battle of the sexes being fought at the highest echelons of government, as well as the invasion of privacy and assault of women at home and in their places of work. For all of that, we are now being joined by Affiong Affiong, the Executive Director of Moyo Pan-African Solidarity Center and Chairperson, Gender Committee of Labour Party's National Transition Committee. Many thanks for joining us on the morning show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good Absolutely.
Happy International Women's Day to you.
Women's Day.
Same to you.
All right.
Now, of course, today is such a momentous day, but at the same time, for lots of women, it's a day of deep reflection where we now ask ourselves, truly, what is the fate of the Nigerian woman? As a Nigerian woman, what access do you have to protection of your fundamental human rights? What access do you have to the right to not be abused, to the right to fair hearing, to the right to freedom of expression and association? What's your assessment on everything that has happened so far, from the issues in the Senate to the issue of the woman who was put in the boot of a car, especially on a day like this, with regards to the rights that are available to us?
Thank you. I haven't followed up on the story of the woman in the boot of the car. So obviously, more conversant with, the issue in the Senate. Now, I think that it's interesting, a lot of times we speak about rights and this and that, but what we see playing out is actually a question of power. It's not really a question about rights or what women have. It's a question of power. That's the bottom line. And the fact that women have no power. And, on the day when they were reading out, Senator Natasha's suspension, it was like a mauling, when you capture, something and then you start to maul it and, tear it apart. That's what was happening. Now, that was also sending out a message to women all over the country. You open your mouth and you speak up, this is exactly what will happen to you. So now bringing it back to International Women's Day, the message for us as women, and it's an enduring message that all over the world, women are still aspiring to it, but we haven't gotten there, is that the question of power is the most fundamental question. And so how do we break it down here in Nigeria? For example, women need to begin to be more involved in politics. We see politics as a male thing, that it's left for men. And of course, even the politics itself, it's presented, in such a way that it locks women out anyway in terms of being able to engage. But women must see this as a fundamental thing, to now take up. Look at the Senate. 109 people, 105 men, 4 women. I mean, it's such an atrocity and it's so shameful, apart from the fact that the other women were nowhere to be found, which is another issue. But it's a question of power. And so women need to recognize that. Now, this thing about rights, nobody is going to give you rights generally. These are things you fight for and take. Because if somebody gives it to you, that person can take it from you.
I really appreciate that you've highlighted this, because I think that's very critical when we talk about women's issues. It's power, it's political power, it's economic power, we're talking about structural inequities. I think a lot of times people say it's the African way, but Nigeria has the lowest number of women in parliament in sub-Saharan Africa.
Shameful.
It is not compared, we can't compare ourselves even to Rwanda in East Africa. But when we're talking about power, I want us also just moving a little bit away from the specific issue in the Senate, but we're talking about political participation and political party reform in order to empower women, but also economic reform in order to empower women. Do you think that Nigeria is moving in the right direction?
Well, when you say, is Nigeria moving in the right direction, who?
Nigerian women. Because we can't face the men, we must face ourselves, right?
Well, first of all, yes, it's not even so much about faith, but developing ourselves. Because before you're able to face anything or anybody, you've got to develop your own self. You've got to grow yourself, you know. So one thing, you know, when it comes to social things, you know, we think, oh, these are women's things. When it comes to politics, even women think so. You know, when it comes to political things, we think these are men's things. The point I'm making is that women, especially young women, they're going to have to recognize that it's on them to develop themselves politically, intellectually, socially, and of course, you know, as women, we're going to have to develop more economic power, because that's how you're going to be able to change anything in the first place, you know. So the point I'm making is that we've got to become more conscientized. What has happened recently has shown us the essence of politics. If you're not political and you don't have power or access to power, you are going to be put down. There's some women who come into these things, they already have a name as in a husband's name or a family name. You know, if your son name is Tinubu or your son name is Kingibe, that's a brand name right there. That's power right there. You don't mess with those names, but that's male power. You see, you know, or your brother or whatever. So the point I'm making is that we're going to have to get to a situation where we become Fumilayo Ransom Kutis, Fumilayo Anikulapo Kutis. You know, we become Margaret Ekpos, all of us. We become Gambo Sawabas, all of us. These are women who fought and who had power in their own names.
Let me come in. Is it okay to call you a comrade? I've had somebody call you a comrade before.
Well, I am a Pan-Africanist and a socialist, but Affiong is fine.
Okay,
you know,
all right.
I put on many hats.
Okay, so I have two questions here. First will be to build further on the thoughts that you have just expressed. And for me, it's a bit intriguing that you say that for you to, speaking to what today represents, that you will have to seek and get power as a woman for you. I'm not sure how to accept that.
Why?
Because the whole point of International Women's Day, and I'd like you to speak to that, accelerate action, is also to seek how to protect those who do not have power.
Who will protect you? Who protects us? Who's supposed to protect us?
So those who can't get power, who may not be able to access power, are doomed. Is that your point?
Generally, yes. But that's the whole point.
But not everybody will be in politics. Not everybody will.
No. More of us need to be. Not every man is in the Senate.
Yeah.
But there's a domination of men. And there's a, you know, in terms of Nigeria, you know, there's, I don't know what we're almost half or whatever in terms of the population as women.
Yeah.
The point I'm making is at the end of the day, it is women who will give women power. And that's it. That is it. So you access the state, you access whatever institutions where you need to access power. You know, I could come here, you know, I'm a political scientist, I'm a lawyer, I'm a historian, I have many hats. So I could come here and talk through all the normal things, our rights, discrimination, this and that. But the bottom line is power.
Yeah, but I'm thinking in terms of if our institutions were...
Who will build those institutions? Us.
Yeah.
Well, we're back
so
to square
the
one.
institutions, you don't think that institutions should be built so that those who will not have access to power, because there will always be majority of them.
But that's the point I'm making. Yeah. It is people who build these institutions.
Yeah.
That's the whole point I'm making. So if women, you know, were beginning to engage consciously with power,
yeah,
we're going to be in those institutions. We would be in the Senate. We would be in the judiciary. We would be in government. We would be in the economic, you know, fabric of this country. So we would be at the table.
I get you now.
The point I'm making is we are not at the table.
I get you now. I get you now. But let me just ask my second question very quickly. You know, I said there will be two. And the two will have to do with, you know, the issues of the day. Because you mentioned we couldn't find those other people. I'm sure that you were referring to the other women senators, you know, in the House. My point is that if the issue of sexual harassment allegation are not cropped up, do you think that the issue between the Senate President and Senator Mrs. Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan will have been treated simply as issues in the Senate, or will it have carried the toga of a woman being subjugated? I'm asking you because of two other issues affecting women lately. First will be the issue affecting Honorable Mojisola Miranda, who was appointed for 49 days as the Speaker in Lagos State of the House of Assembly. I know you're laughing, but I get the point. In Lagos State. And then the powers that be said, no, you can't be there. But I've not seen people react that she's been cheated because she's a woman, because it seems to me that they understand the power dynamics in Lagos that says that the Speaker ought to come from a particular constituency. And then the other point will be the Unizik student who was recording TikTok. And then it appeared that she tried to turn the issue into a case of sexual harassment. But we saw how people reacted to say, no, this is not a sexual harassment. It's about you not behaving appropriately because you were recording TikTok on the road. So people are able to differentiate between what, so that you do not weaponize sexual harassment. So my point is that if the question of sexual harassment are not arisen on the floor of the Senate, do you think that what happened on the day that Senator Natasha said, oh, no, I'm not going to sit on the other seat and things like that, do you think that it will have been treated differently and we won't be dealing with who women have been subjugated or not?
Obviously, this sitting arrangement business is an issue in the Senate. It's happened not once, not twice, not three times.
Everywhere, actually.
Absolutely. So there's been that. But she felt, first of all, I was listening to, the conversation earlier. In any reasonable institution, and the Senate must see this as an opportunity of a learning curve for them. Yeah. It's the most basic of courtesy that if you're going to change my seat, you send a text or a note, say, we're changing, or as soon as the person comes in the morning, you quickly debrief them.
Notify.
Absolutely. It's simple because it's very easy for somebody to put 1 + 1 + 1 and it's, makes more than 3. That why am I being, changed and pushed aside, especially if there have been other things. The thing about how that also happened is it appears that things were building up. Because she said even her bills, when she wants to bring things to the floor, it's blocked. Even Senator Ireti came on air to say, Senator Natasha had told her that, the Senate President said, come and meet me in a hotel or a guest house somewhere to discuss your bill. And she said that was inappropriate, which it was. So the point I'm making is that it shows that there is a build-up, Now, what the details are, none of us are privy to, So I don't know Senator Natasha, I don't know the Senate President, So I'm not interested in the specific details of this or that. But the issues, that appear to underlie, these things. So if, she's seen, the point I'm making is that she was obviously seeing that there's a process of discrimination against her. So sexual harassment is one thing. It stands on its own. Yeah. Discrimination is another thing. It also stands on its own. If you're part of the boys' network, you're not likely to face this. And these are some of the truths, that as women, as a whole, we haven't faced. When women get married, they're very quick to cut off from their girls' networks and quickly join, they think, they're in their marriage, they're fine. And you hear women saying this, I don't have any time for their old friends. But men never do this. They never cut off from their networks. That's number one. Number two, of course, men don't change their names. So, if you were Miss A and then you become Mrs. B, all the people that knew you as Miss A will not be able to get in touch with you anymore, generally, if you don't. And that's why some women retain the maiden name. Because of that networking issue. And for self-identity, the point I'm trying to make is there is no girls' network. And, women have to see this and understand the power dynamics. It's not enough to complain about the boys' network. Build your own power networks as women. Build your own. And that is organizing for power. So wherever and however the discussion goes, we come back to the question of power.
Okay.
Now let's leave the men out of it. Let's chat as women for a minute, right? It's International Women's Day, women supporting women. Now, in a situation where we do have some women in power, and this is just a clear example of how we stand up or support each other. Because like you don't. Like you rightly said, as a woman, there's so many issues that you have to deal with. Number one, you're already dealing with the fact that, listen, it took me 20, 30 years to get to this point. I'm not going to stick my head out for you because I'll be kicked out. Number two, you're dealing with the fact that as a woman in power, you are a mentor. So there are younger women that are following you. So the truth is, what you're speaking about is a generational issue because the women coming up are going to be taught to cower down in the face of adversity. So if we're talking to power, and first of all, getting that power as a woman whose last name is just average. Nepotism is against you. Discrimination is against you. There's several issues against you already. The people who get that access, and they now teach us that the thing to do is cower down and stay silent. How does that give us the power that you're speaking about? It's just a vicious cycle.
No, that's the point. You see, first of all, you've got to conscientize your own self. You have to now look at the life, and I'm wanting to be concrete. Look at the life of a Fumilayo Anikulapo Kuti. You know, I'm saying as a young girl, growing up, as a young girl. And that's why it's important for us to, read autobiographies from all over the world, because that's one of the ways you get your strength. Because you might be thinking, oh, I'm going through a lot of difficult things. You will see and read of women who have gone through things 50 times more difficult than you, and then you'll also see how they were able to rise above that. When I talk about power, power is not just an external thing. It's not something that is in the Senate or in Aso Rock or wherever. It must be inside your own head. This is the first place, the first avenue of power, in your mind. And the mind is the most powerful weapon created on the earth. The most powerful engine, most powerful than any nuclear warfare equipment, is the mind. So if the mind is not developed, and the first thing you develop and you empower is your own mind. Because you cannot give what you don't have.
I really appreciate, because earlier on you spoke about Gambo Saba, which to me is one of the most powerful Nigerian women to have ever graced this earth.
And she was in the North, which is the most patriarchal part of this country, as it will ever get. And yet she stood up to them.
They not produced Queen Amina?
Absolutely. So she wasn't using anybody else's name. She developed herself. Now, I'm just saying this to say for the young women that that's stage one. Yeah. You see? So now when you begin to have an aggregate of such minds, imagine, this is excellent. Imagine if there are 4 women in the Senate. Yes. And 3 of them were Gambo Sawaba, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti, and Margaret Ekpo. Yeah? Do you think they would have been able to do that? I was going to say nonsense. Let me be polite. Okay. That they did. They would, even just 3 of them. I get your point clearly. They would have taken them on. I get your point clearly. We have to run. But that's the point I'm making. But just very quickly, yes. You're the chair of Labour Party's Gender Committee. Of the National Transition. Did it bother you at all that nobody from your party in the Senate stood up? Thank you for asking me that, and you must ask me this because, let me just say that, and I'm speaking, I was so ashamed to see the role of the senator, from the Labour Party. And I'm sure most of us in Labour, it was a shame on us. But then again, there are reasons for that. We'll leave that. But the worst thing about that was that even before his committee sat, he was on air, saying things like, oh, her petition was a non-starter or something to that, dismissive. So he just invalidated even the report of his own committee because he showed, that, he was prejudiced against her even before his committee sat because he was judge and jury. So even that alone just shows, the quality of mind. That's number one, even on him as a person, and not understand even the function of his committee, that he was supposed to rise above it as the chairman of the committee. But from the Labour Party, certainly, for some of us, just it was a disgrace, for us. But yeah.
All right, Affiong, we want to thank you for joining us on the morning show today. Thanks for bringing brilliance and deep analysis into the issue.
And power-packed motivation as well, if I do say.
That's how we go forward.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.